Your container plants keep dying and you're exhausted from replacing them every season. Stop spending money on fragile plants that demand perfect conditions. These 5 perennials are nearly indestructible, surviving intense heat, heavy rainfall, weeks of neglect, and returning year after year, regardless of what challenges they face. If you manage to kill these plants, you might want to reconsider gardening altogether. Before I share these bulletproof perennials, hit that like button if you're finished with high-maintenance plants that perish at the slightest stress. Subscribe to Evergreen Root Garden for plant recommendations that actually thrive in real-world conditions, not just greenhouses, and ring that notification bell so you never miss our honest plant reviews. Your indestructible container garden begins right now. Let's explore the 5 toughest perennials that laugh in the face of neglect and challenging conditions. Here's the reality about most container perennials. They're cultivated and marketed for perfect conditions, consistent watering, ideal temperatures, balanced fertilization, and attentive care. But real life isn't perfect. You forget to water. You travel. Heat waves strike. Storms dump excessive rain, and your containers sit unattended for days or weeks. Most perennials die under these circumstances. They can't withstand the temperature fluctuations, the drought followed by flooding, or the complete absence of attention. However, certain perennials are genuinely resilient. They evolved in harsh environments where conditions are extreme and resources are limited. These plants don't just survive neglect, they thrive on it. The 5 perennials I'm featuring today are the toughest I've ever cultivated in containers. I've tested them through droughts, downpours, scorching heat, freezing cold, and extended periods of total neglect. They survive and continue performing year after year. These are the plants you need if you travel frequently, forget to water, or simply don't want to constantly fuss over containers. Plant number 1, Sedum Stonecrop, the ultimate survivor. If I could only recommend one indestructible container perennial, it would be Sedum. This succulent perennial is so resilient, it's nearly impossible to kill. It survives extreme heat, prolonged drought, heavy rain, poor soil, neglect, and recovers from near-death situations that would eliminate other plants. Upright sedums like Autumn Joy, Matrona, or Maestro form substantial clumps 18 to 24 inches tall with thick, fleshy leaves that store water. They produce flat clusters of pink or red flowers in late summer that age to bronze and remain through winter as attractive dried seed heads. The secret to sedum's resilience is its succulent nature. The thick leaves store water, allowing the plant to survive weeks without irrigation. The roots tolerate both drought and temporary waterlogging, adapting to whatever conditions you provide. Why it survives heat. Sedum thrives in full sun and temperatures exceeding 100 degrees. The succulent leaves prevent water loss, and the plant actually prefers hot, dry conditions over cool, moist ones. While other perennials wilt and struggle during heat waves, Sedum keeps growing vigorously. Why it survives rain. Despite being drought-tolerant, Sedum handles heavy rain and temporary waterlogging remarkably well. The key is proper drainage. In containers with drainage holes, excess water drains away and roots don't rot like moisture-sensitive plants. The plant simply utilizes the available water and continues growing. Why it survives neglect. Sedum is built for neglect. It needs minimal water, zero fertilizer, no deadheading, and no special care. Plant it, place it in sun, and forget about it. It thrives on benign neglect that would stress or kill more particular perennials. Growing tips. Use containers at least 12 inches in diameter with excellent drainage. Fill with well-draining potting mix, ideally cactus mix, or regular mix amended with extra perlite. Place in full sun. Water occasionally when you remember, but don't stress if you forget for weeks. Fertilize once or twice a season if you want, or never, it doesn't matter. In early spring, cut old growth to the ground before new shoots emerge. That's the only annual maintenance Sedum requires. Key benefit. Sedum provides year-round interest with spring and summer foliage, late summer and fall flowers, and winter dried seed heads. It attracts pollinators when blooming and is completely pest and disease-free. It's truly set it and forget it, requiring less care than any other flowering perennial. Caution. The only way to kill sedum is overwatering in poorly draining containers. Use pots with drainage holes and avoid keeping soil constantly wet. Also, sedum needs full sun. In shade, it becomes leggy, weak, and flops open in the center. Provide at least 6 hours of direct sun daily. Plant number 2, Russian sage, the drought-loving powerhouse. Russian sage is a woody perennial that handles extreme conditions with ease. It thrives in blistering heat, survives extended drought, tolerates poor soil, and keeps blooming through neglect that would kill most perennials. The silvery gray foliage and airy lavender blue flowers from midsummer through fall provide months of color. This plant evolved in the steppes of Central Asia, where summers are brutally hot and dry and winters are freezing. It's genetically programmed for extreme conditions and poor soil, making it perfect for neglectful container gardeners. Why it survives heat. Russian sage not only tolerates heat, it loves it. Temperatures exceeding 100 degrees don't faze it. The silvery leaves reflect sunlight and reduce water loss, and the deep root system, even in containers, accesses moisture other plants can't reach. While other perennials wilt during heat waves, Russian sage keeps blooming vigorously. Why it survives rain. Russian sage is drought tolerant, but handles heavy rain without issue as long as drainage is adequate. The plant simply uses available moisture and continues growing. Unlike moisture-sensitive perennials that rot in wet conditions, Russian sage adapts to both extremes. Why it survives neglect. Russian sage prefers neglect to pampering. It needs minimal water, no fertilizer. In fact, fertilization often causes problems, and no deadheading. The more you ignore it, the better it performs. Weekly watering and constant attention actually harm this plant by promoting weak, floppy growth. Growing tips. Plant in containers at least 14 to 16 inches in diameter, with excellent drainage. Use well-draining potting mix, lean rather than rich. Place in full sun, the more the better. Water occasionally during extreme drought, but let soil dry completely between waterings. Skip fertilizer entirely. Russian sage performs better in lean conditions. In early spring, before new growth starts, cut the entire plant back to 6 to 8 inches above soil level. This forces dense, bushy growth from the base and prevents legginess. Key benefit. Russian sage blooms for months without deadheading, handles the hottest, sunniest locations, resists all pests and diseases, is deer and rabbit resistant, and requires almost zero maintenance. The aromatic foliage smells pleasant and naturally repels pests. Caution. Russian sage must have full sun and excellent drainage. In shade or wet soil, it becomes weak, sparse, and susceptible to rot. Also, the base becomes woody over time, which is normal. Don't try to cut into old wood when pruning. Cut just above where you see new green growth emerging in spring. Plant number 3. Daylily, the indestructible classic. Daylilies are legendary for being impossible to kill. They survive heat, cold, drought, flooding, poor soil, neglect, and keep returning bigger and stronger every year. The strappy foliage provides texture and trumpet-shaped flowers in every color except true blue bloom for weeks in summer, with reblooming varieties flowering multiple times. Daylilies are so tough there's a saying, if you can kill a daylily, you can kill anything. They're the ultimate beginner plant and the ultimate survivor for neglectful gardeners. Why it survives heat. Daylilies tolerate extreme heat without wilting or stress. The foliage may scorch slightly in temperatures exceeding 100 degrees, but the plant keeps growing and blooming. The extensive root system, even in containers, stores water and nutrients, allowing the plant to power through heat waves. Why it survives rain. Daylilies handle both drought and flooding. The roots tolerate temporary waterlogging from heavy rain, then adapt to dry conditions when rain stops. This flexibility is rare among perennials and makes daylilies perfect for climates with unpredictable rainfall. Why it survives neglect. Daylilies don't need attention. They bloom without deadheading, though removing spent flowers improves appearance. They grow in poor soil, tolerate inconsistent watering, and survive weeks without care. You can literally plant a daylily and ignore it completely, and it will still bloom reliably every summer. Growing tips. Use containers at least 14 to 16 inches in diameter, filled with any quality potting mix. Daylilies aren't picky about soil. Place in full sun to part shade. They tolerate both. Water when you remember. But don't worry if you forget for weeks. Fertilize monthly during the growing season for maximum blooms, or skip it and they'll still perform adequately. Divide every 3 to 4 years when plants become root-bound. This rejuvenates them and gives you multiple plants from one. Key benefit: Daylilies are genuinely foolproof. They're pest-free, disease-free in most climates, cold-hardy to zone 3, heat-tolerant to zone 9, and they bloom reliably every year, no matter how much you neglect them. Compact varieties like Stella de Oro or Happy Returns are perfect for containers, staying under 2 feet tall and reblooming multiple times. Caution: Daylilies are heavy feeders and deplete container soil nutrients quickly. For best flowering, fertilize regularly or refresh potting soil annually. Also, the flowers last only 1 day each, hence the name. But established plants produce dozens of buds, so you have continuous blooms for weeks. Plant number 4, Yarrow, the tough-as-nails native. Yarrow is a native perennial with ferny, aromatic foliage and flat-top flower clusters in shades of yellow, gold, red, pink, or white. It's incredibly tough, evolved on dry prairies and meadows where conditions are harsh and competition is fierce. This toughness translates perfectly to container growing. Yarrow tolerates extreme heat, extended drought, poor soil, and complete neglect. It's one of the few perennials that actually declines with too much care, preferring lean conditions and sporadic watering over rich soil and constant attention. Why it survives heat: Yarrow thrives in heat and full sun. The ferny foliage is designed to reduce water loss, and the plant goes semi-dormant during extreme heat, slowing growth but not dying. Once temperatures moderate, it resumes active growth and flowering. This adaptation allows it to survive prolonged heat waves. Why it survives rain: despite being drought tolerant, Yarrow handles heavy rain well as long as drainage is adequate. The roots don't rot in temporarily wet soil like moisture-sensitive plants. The plant simply uses available water and continues growing when conditions dry out. Why it survives neglect: Yarrow is designed for neglect. It needs no fertilizer, minimal water, and no special care. In fact, rich soil and frequent watering cause problems, creating weak, floppy growth that requires staking. Lean soil and drought stress produce compact, sturdy plants that stand upright without support. Growing tips: plant in containers at least 12 to 14 inches in diameter with excellent drainage. Use lean, well-draining potting mix without heavy fertilization. Place in full sun, the more the better. Water sparingly, only during extreme drought. Skip fertilizer entirely. Yarrow performs better without it. Deadhead spent flower clusters to encourage continuous blooming and prevent excessive self-seeding. Cut stems back to basal foliage when flowers fade. Key benefit: Yarrow blooms for months from early summer through fall, attracts pollinators constantly, makes excellent cut flowers, is deer and rabbit resistant, and is pest and disease-free. The aromatic foliage has a pleasant scent and repels pests naturally. It's truly a plant it and forget it perennial. Caution: Yarrow can self-seed prolifically. Deadhead to prevent seedlings in neighboring containers. Also, Yarrow causes skin irritation in some people. Wear gloves when handling if you have sensitive skin. And remember, more care is not better with Yarrow. Overwatering and over-fertilizing cause more problems than neglect. Plant number 5, Black-Eyed Susan, the native heat lover. Black-Eyed Susans are native North American perennials with cheerful golden yellow flowers and dark centers. They're incredibly tough, evolved on prairies where conditions are extreme with scorching summers, periodic droughts, and heavy competition from other plants. This toughness makes them perfect for container growing under less than ideal conditions. Black-Eyed Susans tolerate extreme heat, handle both drought and heavy rain, survive neglect, and bloom prolifically from midsummer through fall regardless of how much attention they receive. Why it survives heat: Black-Eyed Susans thrive in heat and full sun. They're native to regions with summer temperatures regularly exceeding 95 degrees, and they bloom most prolifically during the hottest months. While other perennials slow down or stop flowering in heat, black-eyed Susans keep producing flowers. Why it survives rain. Black-eyed Susans are adaptable to moisture extremes. They tolerate drought once established, but also handle periods of heavy rain and temporary waterlogging without root rot, assuming adequate drainage. This flexibility is ideal for regions with unpredictable rainfall patterns. Why it survives neglect. Black-eyed Susans don't need attention to perform. Modern varieties bloom continuously without deadheading. They grow in poor soil, tolerate inconsistent watering, and flower reliably even when completely ignored. They're perfect for people who travel frequently or simply don't want high-maintenance plants. Growing tips. Plant in containers at least 12 to 14 inches in diameter, filled with well-draining potting mix. Black-eyed Susans aren't picky about soil quality. Place in full sun for best flowering, though they tolerate part shade. Water occasionally when you remember, but they survive extended periods without irrigation. Fertilize lightly monthly during the growing season for more flowers, or skip it and they'll still bloom adequately. Deadheading isn't necessary with modern varieties, but removing spent flowers prevents excessive self-seeding and improves appearance. Key benefit. Black-eyed Susans provide bright, cheerful color during the hottest part of summer, when many perennials struggle. They're native plants that support pollinators and wildlife, attracting butterflies, bees, and seed-eating birds. They're also completely pest-free, disease-resistant in most conditions, and genuinely low maintenance. Caution. Black-eyed Susans self-seed prolifically in containers and landscape. This means seedlings pop up in neighboring pots. Simply pull unwanted seedlings. The plants can also suffer from powdery mildew in humid conditions with poor air circulation, though this rarely affects flowering and occurs late in the season. Section 6. What makes these plants different from other perennials? You might be wondering what separates these 5 perennials from the hundreds of other options. Here's what makes them genuinely tougher. Adaptation to extremes. These plants evolved in harsh environments where conditions swing from one extreme to another. Sedum and Russian sage come from arid regions with intense heat and limited water. Daylilies, Yarrow, and black-eyed Susans are native to prairies with scorching summers, periodic droughts, and no supplemental irrigation. They're genetically programmed to handle stress. Efficient water use. All 5 plants have mechanisms to reduce water loss. Sedum stores water in succulent leaves. Russian sage has silvery leaves that reflect sunlight. Yarrow has finely divided foliage that reduces surface area. These adaptations allow them to survive drought that kills moisture-dependent perennials. Flexible roots. The root systems of these plants adapt to both drought and temporary waterlogging. Most perennials either need consistent moisture or excellent drainage, struggling when conditions vary. These 5 handle whatever you throw at them. Low nutrient requirements. These plants evolved in poor, lean soils. They don't need rich, heavily fertilized conditions. In fact, rich soil often causes problems like weak growth and disease susceptibility. This means you don't need to fertilize constantly to keep them healthy. Natural pest and disease resistance. All 5 plants have natural defenses against pests and diseases. Some have aromatic foliage that repels insects. Others have tough leaves pests don't like eating. And all are resistant to common fungal diseases that plague moisture-loving perennials. The combination of these traits makes these 5 plants genuinely different from typical garden perennials. They're not just tough for perennials, they're tough, period. Section 7. Minimal care tips for maximum success. Even indestructible perennials perform better with a few basic practices. Here's the minimal care these plants need. Proper containers. Use pots at least 12 to 14 inches in diameter with multiple drainage holes. Larger is better, providing more soil volume that buffers temperature and moisture extremes. Never use containers without drainage. Even these tough plants will rot in standing water. Well-draining soil. Use potting mix, not garden soil. Potting mix drains well and doesn't compact in containers. For sedum, Russian sage, and yarrow, add extra perlite or sand to improve drainage. For daylilies and black-eyed Susans, standard potting mix works fine. Full sun placement. All 5 plants need at least 6 hours of direct sun daily. More is better. Place containers in the sunniest spots available. These plants tolerate heat and sun that would scorch shade lovers. Watering strategy. Water deeply, but infrequently rather than shallowly and often. Deep watering encourages deep root growth, making plants more drought tolerant. Let soil dry between waterings. These plants prefer drier conditions over constant moisture. Fertilization approach. Less is more with these plants. Fertilize lightly once or twice during the growing season, or skip it entirely. Over-fertilization causes weak growth, reduces flowering, and makes plants susceptible to problems. Winter care. In cold climates, group containers together against a sheltered wall for winter protection. Mulch over the soil surface with straw or shredded leaves. Water occasionally during winter dry spells. These plants are cold hardy, but benefit from minimal winter protection in containers. Annual refresh. Each spring, top-dress containers with fresh potting mix and slow-release fertilizer. This refreshes nutrients without requiring full repotting. Section 8. Common mistakes that kill even tough plants. Even indestructible plants can be killed with certain mistakes. Avoid these errors. Overwatering in poor drainage. The number one killer of these tough plants is overwatering in containers without adequate drainage. Use pots with drainage holes and avoid keeping soil constantly wet. Let soil dry between waterings. Planting in shade. All 5 plants need full sun. In shade they become weak, leggy, sparse, and flower poorly or not at all. Don't try to force sun-loving plants into shade. Over-fertilizing. Rich soil and heavy fertilization cause problems with these plants, creating lush but weak growth that flops over and attracts pests. Use lean conditions and minimal fertilizer. Using garden soil. Garden soil compacts in containers, preventing drainage and suffocating roots. Always use potting mix designed for container growing. Neglecting drainage. Even tough plants rot in standing water. Ensure containers drain freely and don't sit in water-filled saucers. Crowding containers. Give plants room to develop. Cramming multiple plants into small containers creates competition for resources and poor performance. Use appropriately sized containers for mature plant size. Avoid these mistakes, and even the most neglectful gardener will have success with these 5 perennials. And there you have it, 5 perennials that survive heat, rain, neglect, and pretty much anything else you throw at them. These are the plants you need if you want reliable, beautiful containers without constant fussing. Thanks for watching this tough plant guide from Evergreen Root Garden. If this video convinced you that low-maintenance container perennials actually exist, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to Evergreen Root Garden for more honest plant recommendations that survive real-world conditions, not just greenhouse perfection. Comment below and tell me which of these 5 tough perennials you'll try first. I'll see you in the next video with even more practical gardening strategies. Happy low-maintenance gardening!